Welcome back to the Steel City Gridiron Report here on the Stranded Sports Podcast Network. We made you wait for it. We told you this was coming for a couple months, but poor Ethan over there, working to the bone, covering high school football, doing a great job for the Beaver County Times here in the Pittsburgh area, as always. But yeah, we'll get into Ethan's first full-time season of covering that in a future episode. But today, obviously, you know what we have to talk about today. The disastrous effort that we saw in the Steelers-Browns game yesterday. It was a beautiful day for AFC North football. It's everything you want in an AFC North game. You had the wind, you had the snow. I don't know about your household, but in my group chats, there's a lot of conversation of, can you believe they want to build a dome for the new stadium in Cleveland? Can you believe they want to take this away from us? Says two guys watching from their couch who've never played high-level football. But yeah, just a really, I don't know if I want to say the game was fun to watch because of how it ended, but entertaining AFC North football. A lot of fun. I will say fun. A lot of fun to watch that game. Obviously, wish the result was different. Ethan has been simmering for 15 hours now, recording this at about 2:30 on Friday, the day after Thursday Night Football here. And he's just been waiting, chomping at the bit to get going. We just said before we started recording that we're not sure how to go about doing this because we're both just going to start getting flustered, reliving this whole experience again. But Ethan, I will give you the floor. And again, we're shooting for a half hour on this. Just want to reiterate that because I think we could go for the length of Oppenheimer if we were given the opportunity to. But Ethan, you said you were going to rewatch the game. Did you rewatch any of the game? Why don't you lead us in the first part of this conversation here?
No, I did not rewatch the game. I did not. I'm flustered. I'm flustered because coming into the game, and I'm not a big betting guy, but I'm like, oh, I'll look at the Steelers. I'll take the Steelers in this game. I don't know why I did it, but I told myself, why even throw money down? Why even waste money on the Steelers there? And because it's like the Steelers coming into Thursday night after a big win against the Ravens at home. Writing was on the wall for trap game all week. Trap game all week. I knew they were going to lose. I knew from the jump they were going to lose. I saw a stat. There were a couple people that threw it around. Steelers are now 0-8 on Thursday nights against divisional opponents. I think there's something like 2-8 against the Browns in Cleveland. How the Steelers have the Ravens number across the board in their last 8-9 matchup. The Browns have it against the Steelers when they play them at home. So the writing was on the wall for a loss for the Steelers the whole week. And Thursday night's game had everything. You had wind to start the game. Then you had a freaking snow globe in the third and fourth quarter.
They had transparent players in the second half. I don't know what they did to the camera settings, but you could see through Benny Bishop on several occasions.
Right. Yeah, you had to bring out the good old AI numbers for the football field because you couldn't even see the numbers on the damn field. So I mean, yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. I mean, but yeah, I mean, it was what you would expect in an AFC North football game. I guess there wasn't a lot to like. I mean, you got more passing than rushing than you would have thought. But yeah, I mean, the way the Steelers came out, they came out slow, down 10-3 at the half. Just not much to like about their game in the first 30 minutes. Obviously, the Boswell missed field goal set them back early in the game. Were able to force a punt in that first quarter of play, but they were just stale. They came out flat in classic Pittsburgh Steelers fashion, coming off of a big win on that Sunday, coming into a Thursday night game against another divisional opponent. So, that's just looking at things opening up. I mean, they just came out really flat and couldn't really recover. And especially when the snow started coming down, you can't really do much. I mean, they put together a nice drive with Calvin Austin hauling in that touchdown late in the fourth quarter to put them up by 1, and the defense just couldn't get a stop.
I want to apologize. I think I said Benny Bishop. I know it's Beanie Bishop, and I might have actually said the right thing, but it bothered me that I might have said that. Earlier today, I wrote down everything they did in this game that infuriated me. And you might say that that's a strong word, but when you live it for as long as we have, you know, you start to get petty. And I don't want to be a stereotypical Steeler commentator, fan, journalist, whatever you want to call me and Ethan. And believe me, you can call us whatever you want. We're not going to get offended. I don't want to be stereotypical and go, oh, of course, the minute one minor thing goes wrong, you start, flipping out. This is a continued problem where they play down to their competition. You remember the New England Arizona swing last year that made people furious because that now you're shifting seeding in the playoffs. And I still think Pittsburgh makes the playoffs. And this is a conversation for much later in this episode. They still make the playoffs. Like they would have to try very hard not to make the playoffs at this point. But that was one of those games you're like, are they even going to win again this season? They probably will. But I mean, it's just one of those things where when you lose games like this, and I know these games happen at times on a short week in the National Football League, things like this are going to happen. But this is the difference between having a home playoff game and going to Kansas City, playing at Acrisure Stadium or playing at Buffalo at some point. These are the things that shift the whole complexion of your season. And when you haven't won a playoff game in years, and it's the biggest criticism on your head coach who has a very shiny record, Mike Tomlin, never had a losing season. Woohoo! It's a very obvious blunder, I guess you can say, when you're voluntarily losing these very winnable games and hurting your playoff seeding, hurting numerous other factors as well. So I'm going to run down everything that made me mad, and then we can go back and talk about things later. Here is the legal piece of paper, legal pad size piece of paper that I wrote everything down on. I wish I had a drink with me and I'd clear my throat for a second, but unfortunately for all of you, I don't. Here we go. 58-yard field goal in the swirling wind to start the game. Was crazy. I get that it's Boz. I get that he's fantastic. He scored all the points against Baltimore. In case you didn't hear about that, it's only been brought up about 700 times. They sent him out there. I know it wasn't even 50% as bad as it ended up getting weather-wise, but you could still see wind swirling. You could see little bits of snow swirling. 58-yard field goal on the shores of Lake Erie. Shout out. No. And they kept going. That missed opportunity with the field goal earlier. What do you mean the missed opportunity? They gave him an impossible task. I know he didn't miss it like comically poorly, but I mean, they're acting like that was just oh man, they really regret that he missed. Like, I can't believe that. No, it was a 58-yard field goal in the swirling winds. Some of this might not be in order either because I was just writing it down as it came to me. Fields made that awful read to begin with, where if he held onto the ball for another half second, he would have noticed that if he ran left instead of right, he would have potentially scored, at least gotten the first down there. Russell Wilson, I get he's older. I get, the line didn't have a very noteworthy night. But a couple of times when Myles Garrett got to him, he was just like, okay, here we go. The pressure's coming. I'm just going to stand here and wait for, the impending doom. It was bad. He didn't get rid of the football quickly. And you had to have felt the pressure. There are times when there's like 6 guys within a foot of him, and he's just standing there waiting. And I get he's older. I get all that. But I just think he needed to be much quicker in his decision-making as the Browns line continued to tee off on the poor Steelers offensive line. Going for it on your own end, I want Tomlin to show that he has some balls, for lack of a better term, once again. I get Jaylen Warren was your running back who was out there at the time. But hurrying up to get to a 4th and 1, and then you just send Jaylen Warren up the middle when you know that the Browns line's going to blow through you and there's going to be contact. Why are we using Jaylen Warren? And I love Jaylen Warren. I think he's a very good piece to that offense, and him and Najee dynamic's great. But 4th and 1, you're going to run it up the middle. You know someone's going to get beat. You want Najee in there to at least have a chance of getting through that first contact. Jaylen Warren did not. They got their timely turnovers and almost got bailed out from them, but it did not happen. Defense started in horrible spots. They still gave up a couple drives that were way too long for a defense of that caliber. I'm running through this now so Ethan doesn't get mad at me for rambling. Offense looks good, then they can't score. I don't even know if I'd go as far as saying Russell Wilson had a bad game. There's the clip that went viral of Freiermuth being wide open. And I know I just criticized him for not being quick enough delivering the football. But as I say that, though, I know Myles Garrett and company running down on you, maybe, just things slip your mind a little bit. But I don't get why they can't score once they get to the other like 40-yard line. They just suddenly become incompetent, and I don't understand why. Because Russell Wilson throws some really good balls. He threw a slant, I believe, to Pickens on a third down. That was crazy. I don't know how he fit it through the window. The moon balls are great. The pass to Calvin Austin was nuts. I don't know what happened earlier in that drive when he threw it kind of behind Pickens, who was wide open. I don't know if that was the wind, Pickens turned the wrong way, what it was, but he's making some great throws. There are decision-making issues, but nothing to where I'd be like, oh my God, this guy's killing us. The INT was the craziest thing I've ever seen. They get this interception with 4 minutes left. You're like, 2 first downs and this game is over. Like, surely they're not going to completely botch it. And handoff, up the middle. It's like either 3rd and 4 or 3rd and 7. It's one of those two numbers, and I can't remember what it was. They have Russell Wilson, the moonball god, and they run in Justin Fields. I'm like, are they going to do a very obvious run with Justin Fields here? Dear God, no. They let Fields throw a moonball, and I'm assuming the whole purpose of this play was to draw a PI with Pickens, and that's why he acted like he was blasted in the chest with a double barrel shotgun, even though there really wasn't that much contact. But no, that was their 3rd down and, manageable play with the potential game on the line. They shank a punt 15 yards. Then the decline, accept penalty where Mike Tomlin doesn't trust his bajillion-dollar defense to stop them on 4th and 2, which I know there was the crazy stat where Cleveland couldn't convert a 3rd down to save their life, but they had converted like every 4th down. I don't get that. He wasted a timeout. He gave Cleveland 2 chances to get 7 yards because they didn't trot Hopkins out there to try the field goal when it was 4th and 2, and then they switched their decision on the penalty. So Tomlin knew they had 2 chances to get 7 yards, which was crazy to me. I'd trust them to go 1 play for 2 yards, and I'd trust your defense in that scenario. But 2 plays for 7 yards is just kind of crazy. That's not a distance to where I would be like, oh yeah, they won't get this. But I digress. They threw a fade to Patterson for some reason. It made no sense. They shot themselves in the foot so much, Plaxico Burress would be jealous. It was legitimately just awful. It was a horrible Tomlin game. I don't hate Mike Tomlin, but I hate when they do this. When they play a team that they should beat and they just lay a goose egg, they don't come out fired up. Ethan mentioned it, and I know it seems like years since Ethan last talked. I'm sorry. Everyone and their mother knew that this game was a trap game, except the Pittsburgh Steelers, because we've seen it enough times. Never once does this team just come out and say, oh, we're 8-2, but no one takes us seriously. Let's go out and shove our foot up there, where's right out of the get-go. No, they come out, they kick their 58-yard field goals. They got 2 3-and-outs, and then they let up a super long touchdown drive. There's no urgency. There's nothing creative. It's the same thing. Then they start going in the second half, and by that point, you hope and pray the game's close enough, and you pray the other team doesn't get any sort of breaks. I'm tired of it. But Ethan, I just threw the kitchen sink at you, so talk about anything else right now to help these people feel better.
I don't know if I'm going to make them feel any better after that display that we saw last night from the Steelers. I mean, yeah, I didn't think Wilson played bad at all. I mean, yeah, some of his decision making was off. He should have got out of the pocket, maybe tried to get away from the pass rush that seemed to be on him all night. But I mean, 270 yards in those conditions. I mean, he was 21 of 28. That's not bad. He got a touchdown. He didn't turn the ball over. Yeah, he got sacked 4 times, but I mean, overall, it wasn't a bad game from him. Just the running game was non-existent, and that's what I think killed him. When you can't run the football, especially in a divisional game like that, and the weather that was coming down in the second half, we had Warren rush for 45 yards. Harris rushed for 41. You would have thought this would be the perfect game for Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren to come out and run the ball and run it well. And it just wasn't there. I mean, last week against the Ravens, Najee was able to break free a couple of times. Jaylen had a couple of big runs in that game as well. So you were thinking it was going to be much more of the same, but no. It's ridiculous. And I'm surprised Wilson did as well as he did with the lack of the run game. It's ridiculous. And yeah, I know you brought up the point with the interception. I'm like, the Steelers are in a great spot, but there's plenty of game left. I knew in the back of my head as I was watching that game. I knew in the back of my head they're not getting out of here with a win. I go, there's still four minutes and change to go. Everyone's hooting and hollering like, oh yeah, they just forced a turnover on a pass that was nowhere near. I don't even think a receiver. I think the Steelers just got that one right into given them that was given to them right in their laps.
We can't even talk.
No,
we're down so bad,
and they come out and do their little conservative play calling with and run the ball, which I'm fine with them running the ball. I'm fine with them running it. They get. I don't think they got anything on first down. They chipped away on second down, made it what third and 3, 3rd and 4, something like that. And what do they throw a ball in the air, throw a deep shot, like you said. It doesn't make any sense. At least try to run it, and then the shanked punt. Now I get the weather was bad. Waitman just coming in. He's played well. He's punted well all year. He had a couple of big boots against Baltimore last week. He's been punting well all year. I think there's only been 1 or 2 instances where he's had a shank or a bad punt like that. But in that situation, you can't have that. That punt went, 26 yards, I think. And they got the ball.
It was 15.
15? It might have been. And they got the ball at midfield. And that's a tough ask for a defense that was pretty much on the field that whole second half, it seemed like, outside of the 2 Pittsburgh scoring drives in the fourth quarter. It's ridiculous. And it's the same story every year. It's the same story every week. They go down, they come out flat in the first quarter outside of the Commanders game maybe, where they came out and scored right away, or the second drive, and they got things rolling. But they go down in the second half, it seems like, every game, except for the Baltimore game, I guess. They go down, looks like they're out of it, and then they pull off some miraculous comeback in the fourth quarter, and most of the time come out with a win. It's the same story every year. Obviously, the game in Cleveland was a different outcome, and they lose the game, but you can't do that, especially against the Browns, who came into the game 2-8. They're the last team in the division. You have a shot at the number 1 seed in the AFC. You control your own destiny because Buffalo just beat Kansas City a week earlier. You have a shot at the top seed or the 2nd seed in the AFC. And now, do I think they're going to make the playoffs? Sure. But you have a chance to host a playoff game and get a big seed, a high seed, and potentially win your first playoff game since 2016. But now, once again, I mean, I'm not going to overreact and say they can lose out, but with the display they put on last night and their inability to run the ball and the Justin Fields run package experience that everyone was graded to is 3 rushes for 26 yards, just keep Russ in. Because everybody knows 9 times out of 10 Fields is going to run the ball. And yeah, late in games, is that a nice weapon to have? His ability to run the option on his feet and get some yardage? Sure. But I think they just used him too much. Because you didn't really get much out of him regardless. I mean, he threw the 1 pass, and that was it.
He had the 30-yard run as well. And the very next play, they did the very same thing, but he ran to the left and got negative 2 yards. I also love the Justin Fields aspect. Someone described it to me as very high school-y, but him and Russ are the same in a lot of ways, but Russ's legs aren't what they used to be. He had that very nice run yesterday. That one really nice run. And I like that they want to keep Fields involved because I do think there's still a big part of them that thinks he's the answer once whatever happens with Russ happens with Russ.
Absolutely.
But where my issues come in is when it's now crunch time. Keep Russ in there, keep the flow going the same, and don't basically say, "Hey, we're gonna run because Justin Fields is in." Expect him to be the one running with the football. I didn't get that. It was very confusing to me, as was pretty much the entire game. We could sit here and dissect the penalty, which I personally think should have been intentional grounding. I don't think that touching a line. I don't think a lineman touching it illegally. I don't know. They said it was illegal touching because the lineman tried to catch it, but it was it was grounding. But I'm not going to spend too much time on that.
To the box.
Pittsburgh beat themselves way too much for me to be sitting. Oh, well, we only lost because they didn't call grounding. No, there were too many self-inflicted wounds to sit here and grasp onto that straw and pretend that we got screwed out of winning. We could sit there and talk about Watt getting held, or whatever other stereotypical thing you want to say. It doesn't change the fact that this was self-inflicted. This was awful. Speaking of TJ Watt, I would love to know what him and Minkah Fitzpatrick are currently contributing to this team. The most notable thing Minkah did yesterday was him and Joey Porter started pointing at each other when they converted on 3rd and 7 in the fourth quarter. The two of them looked at each other very confused. I believe it was those two. Minkah also had another play where he was doing his signature lurking and just let, I think, Njoku or one of the other 8 tight ends they were using yesterday just catch a ball on a crucial down as well. TJ Watt, I personally, and this could be total Steeler bias, and that's okay because this is a Steelers show, and I try to hide my bias, but whatever. I think TJ Watt's outplayed Myles Garrett almost every game they've had. But of course, yesterday is the first time they play each other since the infamous "nothing I'm not used to" tweet when the PFF single-handedly campaigned to Garrett to get the award last year. And so there was all that animosity. Garrett wanted a personal apology, and all the eyes are on that matchup. And Myles Garrett becomes a game wrecker, has his best game against Pittsburgh ever. And TJ Watt had like a tackle for a loss on a run, never really threatened to sack the quarterback. It was frustrating to see. And I know with Highsmith out, the attention goes even more so to Watt and what have you. I know there's holdings. There's whatever. There's whatever, right? But he was a non-factor. He was a non-factor.
They need to get him help. They need like you said, I get Highsmith's out, but they need to get him some help. I mean,
and Herbig had the fumble
right
too, but like there's no new threat. I don't think they respect anyone else they're throwing out there enough to take enough attention off Watt. And yes, those guys have good plays every now and then, but they know it's not the capabilities aren't the same as when Highsmith's out there. And I'm not saying Watt needs Highsmith to be a good player. I'm just saying now that it is known what kind of player TJ Watt is, it's too easy for these teams to single him out at this point.
They had a tight end. They had a tight end on him. Then they had somebody chipping him. They had no shot of getting to Winston last night. There was no pressure. Winston got sacked once, I think. There was no pressure on him all night. And then when it came down to when they needed pressure on him in that last drive of the game, they couldn't get anything. Couldn't get anything done. So I mean,
there were a couple times they enclosed on him, and I have no clue how he got it too.
No, I don't either. I don't know how he got the throws off. The pocket literally collapsed, and he still got the throw off and found a wide open guy downfield. That last drive when they were able to just chip away and chip down and get down to the goal line for Chubb to rush in for his second touchdown of the game. They were leaving guys wide open. I get the conditions were bad. Probably can't really see well. But they're leaving guys wide open for 10, 15 yards downfield. You can't have that. You can't have that, especially with the game that close in a field goal. Granted, not a given in those conditions. Wins them the game. Way too soft. With the amount of time that they had, way too soft.
Yeah, the whole last drive was just asinine. I don't know if Tomlin was trying to play chess, not checkers, which I have a quote about that I have to read to you that a friend requested. But the whole thing confused me, and I know I alluded to this earlier. When you get the penalty, it's 4th and 2. Okay, you're going to trust your defense. But then no, I want it to be 3rd and 7 now. Actually, wait, let me call a timeout.
I
And
don't
then
I don't
and
mind
like
I don't mind it. I don't mind it because the way that they were running it and the way that Cleveland had the Steelers' way in those short yardage situations. So I don't mind Tomlin going the 30 and 7. Wasting a timeout is a little
mhm.
much. I don't agree with
'Cause it
that.
gave them more time too
Right.
after they already gave
Exactly.
them enough time because they didn't know what to do. And what I
Exactly.
was saying earlier when I was like, they weren't converting on 3rd, but they were converting on 4th, what all that I was mentioning earlier, I would rather them take the 4th and 2 because 3rd and 7 just feels like it's gonna happen no matter what, right? Like, you're giving them 2 plays to get 7 yards, and the way the game's momentum had shifted at that point, that felt like it wouldn't be too bad of an accomplishment for them to find. 4th and 2, like, that's it. Like, that is the game. There's all that pressure. Just take the penalty, and it's 4th and 2. All the pressure flips back to them. Now you've killed like 3 minutes of real time, and you're giving them 2 downs now to run 2 of their best plays. Uh, it was bad. It was bad, and I'm still not coherently articulating what I want to say about that scenario, but I hope you can at least understand why I'd rather give them the 4th and 2 there.
Just it was just poor execution all around defensively in that on that last drive. Even though the defense, I felt like they played, I guess, pretty well outside of Minka and TJ. I mean, they played solid enough to keep them in the game. I mean, with the way the offense was playing early on, they did enough. They forced a turnover when you needed it, but it came down to needing a stop. They couldn't get it and let them
Th-
drive right down the field.
They forced 3 turnovers in the second half.
Yeah,
I think it was 3.
the
They
fumble, the fumble
Cleveland came out
interception. Yep,
and started moving right away. They force a fumble. You have the
yep.
Herbig strip sack, and you have the interception. Like, you can't ask for more
No,
from the defense, especially when you're going for it at random points and they're starting at their own 40. Like,
right.
I don't get it. And this was not the most articulate piece of podcasting in our careers, but like I'm not sure what more you could want the defense to do. You can get mad they let Cleveland have some big drives, get some big plays, but they're on the field for so long. You
Right.
can only ask them to step up so much. They did everything. I get it. They had the bad drives. I keep bringing those up. They let them have some really good, coherent drives. Okay? They did. But they got you 3 turnovers in the second half. I don't know what more you could have done.
And I don't
They
think
got you to 4th and 2.
did the
They
offense convert anything off of those? I don't think they did.
I
I
I
can't recall.
I wanna say the strip sack, they ended up scoring something after that one. I
Oh,
don't believe on the first fumble they did, though, and then the interception, we've talked about that storyline the entire time. Someone said that, Mike Tomlin is waiting until we make it all the way to the Super Bowl to call a timeout, and then he's gonna have 36 timeouts in the, Super Bowl. One of my favorite jokes, a friend told me to read that one. Hi, Matt. So I don't know. And the big picture stuff we've already kind of hit on. I wrote bigger talking points, but we've both been rambling about nothing for way too long now. Um, the only other thing I want to say is what did they sign Mike Williams for?
you got to use them.
He was on.
Got to use them.
I saw him twice. I don't think he had any catches. The dude made really. I'm not saying he was doing something crazy. He made a very nice catch to win the game. The first game he was there. He has no expanded role. It's not a knock on Van Jefferson. I'm sure him and Mike Williams aren't too different in terms of what they're capable of doing. But like, there's George Pickens, and there's the occasional long ball to Calvin Austin, who is fast. And then once in a while, they throw it to Van Jefferson for like 7 yards on a random drive in the middle of the third quarter, I swear. And then there's no other threat. And then once in a while, they throw it to Fryermuth. I don't get it. And we keep saying we don't get it. And we don't. We're not that smart. But it's a disaster. It was a disastrous game. I want to forget all about it. It's the kind of game that you get mad at, which I've been very good at not getting mad at Steeler football. It's like, okay, it is what it is. I'm not going to, there's too many things I'm thankful for in my life to let them ruin it. But yesterday they did it. There was a lot of expletives thrown around in the household yesterday, and I'm baffled. The main point is, how does this happen every year? You want to go through the rest of their schedule? Here's the rest of their schedule: Cincinnati and then Cleveland. I think they're splitting with everyone in their division. I don't know.
I mean, you have to. I mean, it's going to be tough to win on the road in Baltimore, especially after they play the Eagles. It's a shorter week by a day. Then you have KC right after that. I don't think they win in Baltimore. You need to beat Cleveland at home. And I think that's a game they do win. Just being at home and hopefully working their kinks out. But yeah, I think they split the rest of it. They might be able to sweep. They might be able to go into Cincinnati and win next week after the display that they put on against Cleveland this past week. They might be able to go in on the road, but I mean, Burrow's, outside of them losing a lot of their games, Burrow, I think, leads the league in passing, and he's played very, very well with Jamar Chase, who also I think is leading the league in receptions or yardage. So that's going to be a tough task next week. You would think that they would have had an easier time beating Cleveland, but knowing the Steelers and how they play every single year, like we've said, that's a game Pittsburgh goes in, and really looking at it, even though Cincinnati's record is terrible, it's a game they win. Because, I mean, a lot of people would think that, I think Cincinnati's record is not reflective on how they've played this year. I think. Oh no. I think they've played phenomenal, especially with that comeback effort last week against the Chargers. That was insane to watch. But I mean, yeah, I think you split. You split, or either you take two against Cincinnati, and you still control your own destiny in the division right now. They're still in first place. Baltimore has a game against the Chargers, which is going to be a tough matchup on the road for them. The Harbaugh family reunion. And yeah, you got Cincinnati and Cleveland. I mean, they're winnable games these next 2 weeks. Cincinnati and Cleveland. Then you really start getting testy with Baltimore and Philly and those games. I mean, it's going to be tough to pull a win out in Philly. They seem to never win in Philadelphia. They got stomped, their face stomped in the last time they played out in Philly. So it's going to be a tough road for them, but a road where if they play like they did against Baltimore a week ago, then you have a good shot. But if it's another repeat like they did against Cleveland, it's not going to work out well for them. It's going to be the same freaking story over and over again like we've seen the past couple of years.
My potential hot take is they go 500 the rest of the year, which seems kind of crazy. I think they'll beat Cleveland at home. They're going to win one against Cincinnati. I was going to say they're going to beat Cincinnati next week, but Cincinnati's on a bye this week. So the Steelers' mini bye is kind of negated by the fact Cincinnati has a real bye this week. So I don't know. I think they'll beat Cincinnati at home to end the season. They're beating Baltimore again or Philadelphia. I'm not sure which one. Baltimore's probably, I almost want to say, a little more likely just because whatever reason they have Lamar Jackson's number. But here's the deal. They play the Ravens on the 21st and the Chiefs on the 25th.
That is abysmal.
It's crazy.
That is criminal.
And again, like, I don't want us to come off as just super apologetic Steeler fans. It's nuts. I know they're seeing dollar signs out the wazoo, a Netflix game at 1:00 on Christmas, because you need football on Christmas. The NBA is not enough. We need to tap into that market, says Roger Goodell and pals. But I mean, they're not winning both of those games. They're not beating Kansas City. I think that this is like super conspiracy stuff, and I don't actually believe this, but like, it feels like this was just like, let's get a massive audience to watch Kansas City and Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh can just, be the poor little scapegoats to watch a masterclass from the Chiefs here. But I don't know. I don't
You,
know. It'll be a short week for the Chiefs too, obviously. But I don't know when their bye is, so that could be
you,
a thing.
you
But
want your test, Pittsburgh. You want to see if you're on par and ready to take down the big dogs in the
wow,
NFL. There's your test. There's your 3-week stretch. You got 6 days in between the Philadelphia and Ravens in Baltimore game, both on the road, and then you come home on 4 days rest and play on Christmas Day
yeah.
at Acrisure. There's your
And to
test.
be fair, Kansas City's traveling, and they're going to have the same amount of time off.
Right.
But Pittsburgh's playing Baltimore, Philly, Kansas City.
As
I
a
pity
as a football fan, though,
I
you can't ask for better scheduling.
I pity Pittsburgh a little more in that scenario. So I'll eat a few of my words there and say yes, Kansas City has to travel and has the same amount of time in between. But I don't know. They're beating Baltimore, Philly is my hot take, and I think they go 500 to end the year these next 6 weeks. This was incoherent rambling and complaining hour with Nick and Ethan. Ethan, any final thoughts before we depart and try this again next week?
Don't overreact. It's one
Wow.
game. It's one game. I'm glad I got everything off my chest. It's one game. They can lace them up again next week. You have some extra rest. It's like a mini bye with the Justin Fields can enjoy celebrity guest picking on College Game Day tomorrow in Columbus, and just take the weekend off and reset for yet another divisional matchup the next 2 weeks.
You know, things are bad when Ethan's giving a pep talk a varsity grade school football coach would give. There's always next week, boys. Thanks for listening. Steel City Gridiron Report. That's Ethan. I'm Nick. I promise we're better than this normally. This was a lot of anger and venting had to come out here. Hopefully you were at least entertained. We'll see you next week. What a selling point. We'll see you next week. Take care.